Sergeant Billy, the true story of a goat that went to war. A train full of soldiers made a stop in a small prairie town. In that town, there was a girl named Daisy with a goat named Billy. "Mind if we borrow your goat?" one of the soldiers asked Daisy. Daisy almost said no. She was very fond of her goat, but the soldiers were going to war, and they thought Billy would bring them good luck. So Daisy said yes, as long as they brought Billy back after the war. The soldiers promised they would, and that's how Billy's extraordinary story began. During the long ride to training camp, Billy climbed on the seats, the luggage, and the soldiers' laps to the delight of most of the men. By the time they reached their destination, the soldiers of the 5th Battalion had become very fond of Billy. "He's one of us now, an army goat. Let's call him Private Billy." And that's how Billy joined the army. When the soldiers trained, Private Billy did too. He marched, crawled, and ran with the best of them. When a soldier lagged behind, Private Billy knew how to get him back with the pack. Soon it was time to ship out to England and join the fight. The colonel ordered Billy to stay, but the soldiers of the Fighting Fifth had grown so attached to their goat that they didn't want to leave him behind, so they snuck him on board. And that's how Private Billy crossed the ocean. As the war raged on and the enemy troops advanced, the 5th Battalion was sent from England to France to fight on the front lines. Mascots were strictly forbidden at the front, and since the soldiers had already snuck Billy over to England without permission, the colonel was watching them extra closely. But the Fighting Fifth was determined. "We can easily find another colonel, but we'll never find another Billy." So they bought a huge wooden crate of oranges, ate and sold all the fruit, and then used the empty crate to smuggle Private Billy into France. And that's how Private Billy went to the front lines. Unlike many of the soldiers, Private Billy took well to life in the trenches. He didn't mind the mud, or the cold, or the noise, or the foul food, or even the rats. Private Billy was by the soldiers' sides in victory and defeat. He was the first to befriend the nervous new recruits and to comfort those who missed their fallen friends. Instead of writing about their own hard times, the soldiers often wrote about Private Billy in their letters to their loved ones back home. July 15th, 1915, somewhere in France. My dear mother, I do hope you and Father have not been worrying too much about me, as I'm getting on all right. Fortunately, we have our dear goat mascot, Billy, to keep up our morale. He gave us quite a start during night patrol yesterday. The other sentry and I mistook the sound of his snoring for that of a German patrol. Imagine our relief when we realized it was just Billy. Your loving son, Charlie. Still, there were some, including the colonel, who did not think a goat belonged in the trenches. "We have no food or space to spare," he said. But Private Billy wasn't picky. If the food rations were low, he ate whatever he could find. Once, he was even caught nibbling on some very important secret documents. "This is treason," the colonel declared, so he placed the goat under arrest. And that's how Private Billy went to jail for being a spy. Without Billy to rally around, the soldiers were unhappy. They fought with each other and were bored and grumpy. The colonel was perplexed. All this because they missed their goat? So Private Billy was forgiven and returned to the 5th Battalion. Private Billy became instrumental in battle. Even the colonel had to agree, and that's how Private Billy was promoted to sergeant. At Ypres, Sergeant Billy captured an enemy guardsman. At Hill 63, Sergeant Billy caught trench foot. At Hill 70, Sergeant Billy was shell-shocked. At Festubert, Sergeant Billy boldly saved some soldiers' lives by headbutting them into a trench seconds before a shell exploded right where they'd been standing. No matter how hard things got, the soldiers always looked after Billy, and Billy always looked out for his soldiers. For exceptional bravery in the face of danger, the Mons Star is awarded to Sergeant Billy of the 5th Battalion. And that's how Sergeant Billy became a decorated war hero. Months, seasons, and years passed. Not everyone survived. But Billy was still with the Fighting 5th when the roar of the cannons finally stopped. "The war's over! Thanks! Our lucky goat! 3 cheers for Sergeant Billy!" The voyage back was long, but the soldiers of the Fighting 5th had a promise to keep. So with feverish hearts, they crossed the hundreds of miles of smoldering land and the hundreds of miles of stormy sea. And that's how Billy came home. As incredible as it may seem, the story of Sergeant Billy is real. In 1914, during World War I, the 5th Canadian Battalion acquired a goat from a young girl named Daisy while passing through Broadview, Saskatchewan. Everything that happens to Billy in this book is true, including the fact that he returned home to Daisy in 1919 and lived out the rest of his life. Many animals assisted in World War I: dogs, horses, goats, cats, bears, pigeons, pigs, even a duck. Some animals, like horses, dogs, and pigeons, were working animals. They helped carry messages and artillery. And some animals were mascots, who helped raise spirits and keep soldiers company. But no matter their role, all of them were heroes, including Billy. Billy is now part of a permanent collection in the Broadview Museum in Saskatchewan, where you can read all about his exploits and see photos of Billy and his comrades. Because the events of this story took place a long time ago, some details and the order in which they happened are hard to confirm, but one thing is certain: Sergeant Billy was an exceptional military service animal whose stories should be shared and celebrated.